Larry Sharpe here at Freedomfest, having great conversations here, talking about values and ethics and about respect. And I'm very lucky today I have with me Michael Shermer, the publisher of Skeptic Magazine. Michael, please tell us about yourself a little bit.
Well, the magazine is a quarterly publication of the Skeptic Society. We're a 501c3 nonprofit science education organization. Our mission is teaching critical thinking, rationality, empiricism, science, logic, reason. We want to know what's true. We have an enlightenment commitment to universal realism. We think we can know something about it, even though we're not omniscient, so not perfectly so.
Sure.
But that there are tools we can engage in to try to figure out what's real, what's true, and that those tools are tried and true for the last several centuries, and we should apply them everywhere, including politics, religion, economics, ideology, anything.
Now you're asking a lot.
Yeah, no sacred cows.
Now you're asking a lot. That's great. I kind of want to bring up a little bit of that. The idea that right now in America particularly, but across the world, people are really fighting on the left-right paradigm, right? And they're putting people in boxes. Oh, you're a conservative. Oh, you're a progressive. And once I hear one of those, I now judge you, right? I can't hear you now because you're not the thing that I am. But what I'd like to hope, at least, is that our values being more conservative or more progressive aren't anywhere near as important regarding our ethics of when should we use coercion versus when we should use persuasion, right? At what point do we go to coercion? At what point do we say, no, this is just persuasion. My values may be different than yours, but I don't have a right to use coercion. That's a big piece we're talking about here.
I think so. Yeah, the labeling problem is a problem. You know, I used to call myself a libertarian, but I could tell that people had all kinds of baggage in their head.
Yes, but they were wrong. Libertarians are awesome. Sorry.
So I'm taking to call myself a classical liberal in the kind of founding fathers tradition.
Sure.
Enlightenment philosophy, that kind of thing. And that people go, oh, what's that? And then I can, riff on that. Yeah, so persuasion versus coercion. Obviously, we would prefer less coercion.
Sure.
But you can't avoid it entirely.
Right.
There's collective action problems that have to be solved that even libertarians agree. We need property rights. Okay, how do you enforce those? Well, you got to have a legal system, contracts, and a court system, and you need police and you need military so we don't get invaded. Before you know it, you have a government with a bureaucracy that has to be paid for with taxes. And if your guy down the street says, I'm not paying any taxes, well, that's hardly fair if I have to pay taxes. So we're going to make him pay his taxes, right? Or we're going to collect them before he gets a paycheck at work, right? So we're already on board with some of that. So the question is, where do you draw the line? And there's no hard, correct answer to that, although it's a debate, right? Should vaccines be mandated or are they voluntary?
Sure.
Could you drive on either side of the road that you want? No.
Right.
Okay. So there's some things where automobiles should be regulated. What about guns? Should they be regulated just like automobiles or airplanes?
Sure.
Well, to a certain extent, right? So then, those are the hard issues.
So I guess the point I want to bring up here with this is, I agree with you. We have to decide what's the right answer. My worry is so often we are concerned about what's the outcome or what's the intent. I would argue that we have to think about people being happy in general. And my argument here would be, I think most people, whether they're right or wrong, want to be happy. Do you think that's true or no?
I think happy is not the right word.
Okay, what's the right word?
I think they want to lead purposeful, meaningful lives.
Okay.
That make them feel self-fulfilled. They have meaning in their lives. Because the problem with the word happiness is it kind of conveys this walking around with a blissful smile on your face.
Gotcha.
And that doesn't do a lot for deeper, purposeful, meaningful activities in life that give you, at the end of your life, you'd say, I led a meaningful life. It isn't just, so that, there's research on this. So immediate short-term activities like having dinner and drinks with friends. That makes you happy, but it's short-term. But the next day it's like, well, okay, that was fun, but now what?
So happy is too simple of a term.
It's too simple, it's too short-term. We know from research on purposefulness and meaningfulness is it's more long-term. Like looking back, what have I done with my life? Looking forward, what are my long-term plans? Like in the next 20 years, I want to do this and this and this because I want to feel like, well, that usually involves things that don't make you happy. So my simple example is, working out. When I work out hard, I'm a cyclist, right? It's not fun. I'm not out there with a smile on my face. I'm working.
Right.
But afterwards I feel, well, that was good. I feel good. My body is stronger.
So is a better word maybe like satisfied?
Satisfied.
Is that a better word?
Sort of self-fulfillment or
self-fulfilled.
Something like that.
Okay.
Right.
So let's try to find a simpler word, a simpler phrase. Is self-fulfilled gonna kind of fill that gap for now?
And also lack, on the negative side, lack of suffering, right? So what's our moral foundational point? Well, I often turn to Jeremy Bentham's quip about animals. It's not can they think or can they talk, but can they suffer? So the suffering of our fellow sentient beings is where we start, and we want to reduce that. And then build. We want to make them happy, we want to make them fulfilled, we want to help them lead meaningful lives.
Okay.
And there's lots of pathways to get there.
So let me try to make two simple statements and see if you agree with these. If someone is to physically harm you, hurt you, something like that, you're going to be less happy, less satisfied, less fulfilled, right? Simple.
Yeah.
If someone is trying to either take your property or vandalize your property, either through theft or through fraud, again, you're going to be less satisfied, less fulfilled. If that's true, that would mean that a kind of principle would be, if you want people to be more happy, more harmonious, more prosperous, we want to go out of our way to not take their stuff and to not harm them.
Yes, right. Pretty basic, yeah.
Yes.
I like that, yeah.
But that's basic here at Freedomfest.
Right.
My question is, does the average person, in their own heart, for their own people, for their own loved ones, they think, yeah, I want to be kind of harmonious, I want to be happy, I want to be prosperous, please don't take my stuff, please don't hurt me. Is that kind of universal?
I think so. I think it's part of human nature. I think we can ground our morals in the way things actually are in the world. This is, Hume's wall separating is and ought, or that facts and values are separate. No, they're not. I think the values we hold and the goals we set to achieve those values are grounded in human nature. Would you rather live in North Korea or South Korea? Everybody would say South Korea, except for the people in North Korea who are have a gun to their head.
Correct. Right.
Or would you rather live in East Germany or West Germany during the Cold War? Well, West Germany. Why is that? Well, people would prefer to be free rather than enslaved. They prefer to have food in their bellies as opposed to starving. They'd prefer to have a job as opposed to be unemployed, and on and on and on. These are they'd rather not be in pain. They'd rather, enjoy a physical health as opposed to being disease-ridden. And down the line, that's human nature. I think that's who we are. And also we're social, right? So,
of course.
We want to be part of a family, a clan, a tribe, a group, a community of some kind. That's all good. And attempts to regulate that from the top down inevitably fail because they're usually based on some flawed theory of human nature. We're all blank slates. We can engineer humans to live in any society we want. No, you can't actually. That was tried throughout the 20th century in these communist societies where we're going to engineer literally buildings and roads to be a certain way because this is our theory of human nature. Wrong. Right. People actually like nature and plants and flowers and meandering roads and not boring, ugly architecture. All that was because of a flawed theory of human nature. So I think, the attempts to do this using science and reason and what do we know about human nature, very much the constitutions of society should be grounded in the constitution of human nature.
I like that. So you would say it's kind of a principle to say that the idea of human respect of yourself and hopefully others is going to be much better to keep people happy, harmonious, prosperous. That's kind of a principle.
Right. So property rights.
You
can't. Having police to protect us from criminals. Those are kind of the negative things. But
I want to go to what's positive, though, right? You made a point on how governments try to create. I'm going to make this city this way, or I'm going to make this building this way. When, say, for example, Republicans decide, hey, I think life will be better if we decide who can get married and who can't get married, right? That's going to be better for society. It's the greater good, right? So their concept is greater good. They're not trying to be mean or horrible. They're trying to help and make things better. So when they say that, is there an exception to this rule for something like that?
Right. Well, governments do this. Let's pick a couple of easy examples. Like, apparently the government would like me to be married because I get a tax break.
Sure.
And they would like me to own the home I own because I get a break on the interest on the mortgage I own. Okay. And I get a break for having children. So the government is kind of nudging me. These are things we want you to do. Well, who decided that? I'm happy to take the tax break, right? I'm not getting money, but I'm not having to pay as much money, right?
Right.
So we do this all the time. You know, it's the nudge, the kind of libertarian paternalism. You know, like in California, on my driver's license, I punch the little tab that I will donate my organs if I'm killed.
Right.
But so I have to opt in. In Oregon, you are giving your organs unless you opt out, right? So those are decisions that are made by governments and that affect all of us.
Now, is that a good exception, I guess, right?
I guess, yes.
In this case, they're trying to do the right thing.
Right.
That's the goal.
Right.
The intent is so if governments say, hey, I think you should get married, you shouldn't, you can.
But that goes too far, right?
That's going to make a better world, right? I believe that, so I create the law, and that's what I do.
And where that goes wrong is where people think, well, I don't think letting gays marry is a good thing for society because before you know it, they'll be marrying animals or some slippery slope argument, which is not true. So that took a long time to change, right? Or interracial marriage, you know, as late as 1967, it was illegal.
Yes.
Right now, it's the law of the land. Okay, so those are examples of the bad side of the government saying, you know, kind of a collective argument that prostitution or pornography or drugs are going to bring down the overall moral fabric of the community or the society. Whereas that's a kind of conservative argument.
Sure.
Whereas libertarians would say it's none of my business what consenting adults do in the privacy of their bedrooms or their homes, as long as it's not, you know, the exploitation of minors and children or something like that. And so, or if you want to me, I'm trying to convince conservatives, just legalize it, regulate it, tax it. You can make a lot of money, right? But they're consenting adults. Just treat it like anything else. That's one of those issues that people have a hard time getting over their religious background on this, or they're kind of moralizing. Like, I don't think gay sex is good, so therefore you shouldn't do it.
Well,
or I don't like drugs, and you shouldn't like drugs.
Let's do something else. What if they say, look, undocumented workers, they're bad. Because if undocumented workers are being hired, then Americans aren't being hired. So what we should do is pass a law that says, you know what, we should punish companies who hire undocumented workers. And that's for the greater good, to help out Americans, right? The goal is a good thing. Is that an exception?
Well, there I would say, the libertarian take on this is I agree with. That is to say, let the market decide. And why are companies hiring these people? Because they want to work and they can pay them lower wages.
Right.
But the argument that they're taking Americans. Well, this is economic nationalism.
Yes.
Which really goes back to pre-Adam Smith. It's kind of mercantilism.
Sure.
Well, it's a fixed pie. It's a win-lose, a zero-sum game, and the more that the Mexicans get our jobs, the fewer Americans are getting those jobs. Yeah, well, these are pretty crappy jobs that most people wouldn't want anyway. So why not let them? So to me, let the markets. I live in California, so just let them come and see. They won't come if there's no
I live in New York City. It's a sanctuary city. Yeah, I absolutely understand.
Yeah. So what's there?
So in this case, what you're saying, if I get it, is in both cases there really aren't exceptions. That still the principle of human respect is still critical. The idea of respecting each other is still important, even though it may be a greater good intent.
I'd say just economically porous borders.
Okay.
Maybe we still need political borders. The nation state is not a permanent fixture on the history of humanity. I think we could get beyond that. For now, we're stuck with it. But economically, just open up those borders. Let's trade with Cuba and so on.
Okay.
Just because then they're more likely to adopt the kind of freedom values that we cherish.
Better values, right? Sure.
Yeah.
Now, I can see persuasion is going to be better to get the right values that we want anyway.
Yes, of course, if possible. It's hard to force people to believe something at the point of a gun.
Right.
Now, on the other hand, back to where we started. Would slavery have ended without a war in America? Would it have fallen into disuse economically? It doesn't look like it would have until maybe the 1890s or even 1900. That's a long time to continue enslaving people. Not good.
Right.
Sometimes you just have to send in the troops. Like the integration of schools, segregation of schools is clearly unfair. And
so then let me walk down that road, right? We went social, we went economic. let me go actual life and death, right? So now I did Republicans, let me do Democrats. Democrats will say, hey, look, guns are bad. People die from guns. Tons of gun deaths. We should ban all the guns. And Democrats, when they say that, aren't trying to be mean. They aren't trying to hurt people. Their goal is, I want people to live. This is lives. This isn't economics or social. This is life and death.
Is anyone really
saying, ban all the guns?
Is anyone really arguing to ban all guns?
Yes.
Who?
People in my state all the time.
Really?
Yes, all the time.
I mean, I think...
and what happens is they slowly ban more and more guns until every gun owner is a felon.
Yeah, see, I think that the kind of the mainstream debate is how much regulation of guns. Okay, so first of all, we're never going to get rid of guns. There's over 400 million guns in America. Okay, and if the government did try to confiscate or buy back or whatever all guns, it would be like a Ruby Ridge, Waco every day.
Sure.
All right, so this isn't going to happen.
Absolutely.
Let's be realistic.
But what, then let's not go down that road. Let's go more realistic. What if they just say we want to ban AR-15s and we want to ban AK-47s and things like that?
Another alternative, like in Germany, where my wife's from, you can own a assault-like rifle or semi-automatic rifle, but it stays locked up at the club where you go to shoot because it's a kind of a sport, right? You can't have it at home. What do you need a gun at home, right? They don't have a gun problem there, and so, or regulate it. Just, how many people should be able to buy those kinds of guns? A lot of these laws are already on the books; they're just not enforced. The gun show loophole. Felons that can get guns, guys with restraining orders can get guns. They shouldn't get guns because when a woman is killed, it's like 90% of them are killed by a significant partner, a significant other partner, in a divorce or breakup. Yeah. So,
but let's go back to that piece, right? If I say it's okay to say, for the sake of argument, ban the AK-47 or ban the AR-15, is that's coercion too, isn't it?
Yep.
Right? Isn't that also coercion? Isn't that putting my values on someone else?
In the same way that we do with, say, the regulation of automobiles, seat belts, airbags, this is the good for society. Well, what if I don't want those? Yeah, well, because of the way the healthcare system works, I am paying for your stupidity, right?
Got it, okay.
So maybe if we didn't have that kind of health system, I wouldn't care what you do with, you don't want to wear a helmet riding a motorcycle and you bash your head up. And if I don't have to pay for it, well then go do whatever you want. I don't care. Be as stupid as you want. Right. But that's not the way it works, unfortunately. So that would be a solution if we didn't have that. So, again, my simple example, driving on either side of the road you want. No, I'm much freer knowing that you cannot drive on the opposite direction on my side of the road. Therefore, we're freer by restricting people's freedoms. Freedoms are restricted all the time in good ways. The question is, what are the bad ways and how do you separate them, which is what we're talking about.
So if we had to make a decision, and I guess I fall back to the same thing always, my worry about saying, well, we should do it because I think it's greater good, or we should do it because whatever the piece is, shouldn't we first measure it about almost like a do no harm, right?
Yes,
shouldn't I first look at it as human respect? Is this going to obviously either take someone's stuff or harm them to the point where I'm going to have less harmony, less happiness, less prosperity? The principle of human respect, shouldn't I measure it against that first and then go, okay, now what am I trying to achieve? What's the greater good?
Yeah. So there, it's kind of a utilitarian argument, a kind of Bentham type. The greatest happiness for the greatest number. What's the calculation we can make here?
Right.
Of course, the problem is that it's easy to go down the road of saying, well, we really should restrict the freedoms of those people because it's better for our tribe.
Right.
Well, it's easy when you're the one that gets to be in power,
of course,
right?
Yes.
So
it's great when I have the gun.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, this like the Supreme Court case of the football coach saying the prayer at the 50-yard line with his students. And of course, everybody cheers, Christians are cheering this. Well, what if he was down there on the 50-yard line saying, Allahu Akbar?
Right.
And the answer is, oh my God, no, that would not be good.
Right.
What's the principle here? You're either going to allow people to say what they want or pray to whoever they want, or you're not. So
you're going to have respect for people or not.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So,
right. I get that.
Well, so what's the deeper principle? Free speech or separation of church and state or whatever. Of course, the solution would be no public schools, just have private schools, right? Christian schools, Jewish schools, Muslim schools.
I'm not going to fight you on that one. So yes, absolutely. So yeah, I love what you're saying. What I'm coming across, what I believe is, we are going to have some exceptions.
Yes,
right? In theory, we should all be free and have no rules. That'd be amazing. But there are going to be exceptions. My worry is a left-right paradigm is going to make those exceptions bad. Because now I'm enforcing my values on others, I'm using coercion, versus saying, what's going to make people happy? What's going to give people the most respect, right? Which will give me the most happiness, the most everything. And that's what I want to base it off of, not basing it off of my values, basing it more off of my ethics than my values. I think that's what I think is a good idea. Do you agree with that or no?
I like Thomas Sowell on this, that there are no perfect solutions, they're just compromises.
Yes.
You can't have everything, right? So a lot of issues come down to conflicting rights.
Sure.
Like abortion, the rights of the woman to abort her fetus if she wants or not, and the right of the fetus to live.
Right.
Can't have both.
Right.
So we make decisions like that. Or trans rights or human rights, yes. But what about a male to female trans that wants to compete against women in sports, and they unfairly dominate the sport? Okay, women's rights, trans rights. You can't have both. In this case, something has to give. And much of life is involved in these kind of conflicting rights or conflicting interests. You can't have everything. That's just the way it goes, right?
Absolutely.
So we have to just make those decisions. I guess in a way, democracy is or the market is grounded in this. Day to day, we're making decisions. I can't have this, I can't have that, but I can have this.
Well, that's my worry about democracy, right? While I'm not anti-democracy, but we have a lot of people who would say, yeah, look, I would never hurt Michael. I wouldn't do that. But if we all vote to hurt Michael, well, then it's okay, because then I won't be doing it. The ATF will, or the police will, or the sheriff will, or the IRS will. I'm not hurting you. It's the IRS that's getting you. And I voted, so therefore it's okay. It's almost like voting isn't violence. In many people's head, voting isn't coercion. Voting makes it okay regardless of the outcome.
Yes, well, that's why we have a Bill of Rights.
Okay, there we go.
That doesn't matter how many people want X. It says right there in the 8th Amendment or whatever, you can't do that.
Right.
Good. I'm glad to have that.
Good.
Now, there's the gray areas there. Of course, those things are changing.
Sure.
But yeah, that's, again, no perfect solutions, no utopia.
Absolutely. I would like more people to realize, though, when they're voting, they're also being coercive. And when they're voting, they should also be thinking about human respect. Because my bigger issue of this whole thing is, with that left-right paradigm we talked about earlier, how so many people won't hear each other. I think if we start with human respect, people will hear us more. If we begin there with that principle of human respect, of trying to get as many people as possible to be happy, harmonious, prosperous, and respecting not just myself but others, then now I got a chance of people hearing me. And I can persuade them. That's where my head goes.
Right. Yeah, well, that's the psychology of persuasion, for sure. If you start off telling somebody they're an idiot for what they believe, conversation's over.
Absolutely.
So, so it's just kind of good to remember, no one's omniscient. You don't know everything. The guy you're talking to may know more than you about something, so you should listen.
Right.
But John Stuart Mill also makes the point that he who knows only his own side of the story doesn't even know that. Right? If you're a pro-choicer like I am, what are the best arguments by the pro-life side? If you say, I don't really know, or they hate women, that's not their argument. You didn't.
Yes.
So your pro-choice position is really not that strong if you don't know what the other side says. So you gotta engage other.
You don't respect the other side,
right?
Even though you think they're wrong,
that's
you have to respect them.
Right.
It's all about respecting my view. I appreciate it. It's a great conversation.
All right, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Nice to see you.